Now, over the years, I've read over 600 books, but they weren't all worth it. For example, The Painted Bird by Jerzy Kosinski was pure World War II nightmare fuel I will never forget. It's even banned in Poland, but many books that I've read gave me insights that genuinely changed my life, and now I want to share those same insights with you. So this video would be 10 hours long if I mentioned every single book, so instead I'm going to share with you the best lessons I learned. So let's get into it. According to a survey in the US, 88% of pet owners are more likely to give high quality nutrition and medicine to their dogs than they are to take it themselves. So most of us value the health and well-being of our dogs more than our own. Now, I don't own a dog myself, but I did struggle to be kind to myself for a long time. That was until I read a book called Radical Acceptance by Buddhist teacher Tara Brach. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. I didn't really research it before recording this video, but it's basically a book that teaches you how to fully accept the whole spectrum of being human so you can be more at peace with yourself. And there's a section where she talks about the art of being your own best friend. And when I read it, I realized at the time that I was probably the furthest thing I could be from my own best friend. I was always judging myself and holding myself to impossible work standards. I've always been ambitious, but at the time perfectionism was really dragging me down. But in the book, the author talks about how you can be there for yourself like an amazing friend that you want to be around all the time. And it sounds a little bit cheesy, right? But you can be someone who encourages yourself and comforts yourself when you really need it, or you can be someone that really hurts yourself and talks down to yourself, which leads to negative consequences. Now, it might sound a little bit weird, and I do get it. Most of us struggle to comfort ourselves because when we do, it kind of splits us in two. Instead of just, taking on the role of caregiver or care receiver, we're performing both at once, which can be pretty confusing. It's weird, but it also works, especially with practice. When you tell yourself that you'll do better next time after you fail, you separate yourself from your suffering. You're showing yourself that you're more than just the victim who's in pain. You step out of the victim role for a moment, which really calms you down and allows you to choose better response. A professor of psychology at Durham University, procrastination is not only emotional, it's the self-compassion problem. Chronic procrastinators are usually their own harshest critics, and according to Sirius, this is what keeps the cycle of procrastination going for years or even decades. Becoming your own best friend means that you will more easily get through the hard times and dust yourself off when you fail. You'll get back in the ring and start crushing it again. If you're a perfectionist who never gives themselves a break, maybe you really need to rethink this. There are 3 golden opportunities hidden in every single failure. Rick Rubin, author of a great little book called The Creative Act, is a legend in the music business. The grey-haired music producer who looks a little bit like Santa Claus has worked with artists from every genre under the sun. Nobody's really sure what he does, but I think he just bees creative. He doesn't even know how to use the equipment that he's working on. But he's worked with artists such as Linkin Park, Johnny Cash, Shakira, and Eminem. After a bunch of award-winning albums, Rubin has learned one thing: you can't control the audience. Great records might flop, bad ones might take off. All you can do is set yourself the highest standard possible and stick to it. If you do that, you can let the idea of failure go. Another person to mention is Steven Pressfield, author of The War of Art. He likes to use failure as a teacher, and he says that if you continue to fail, maybe it's time to change the plan and work on a new aspect of your craft. And he's pretty familiar with failure because he was rejected by publishers for 15 years. And he then decided to stop writing for a bit, move to Hollywood and learn screenwriting, and doing this helped him write way better novels. Eventually, he did get published and he did become a big success, and if he never moved to Hollywood, maybe he'd still be failing today. Another useful example happened to the Beastie Boys. When their second album tanked, it gave them freedom to try new things. So once you've hit rock bottom, you're free to be as creative as you want because no one expects great things from you. So with success comes pressure to deliver, and that can constrict you. With failure comes a kind of strange freedom. Failure can be a blessing in disguise. So the most successful people are often the ones who dared to fail the most. With each failure come 3 great opportunities: to learn, to figure out what you can control, and figure out what you can improve. Now, before we carry on, if you like this video and it gives you some insights that are valuable to you, go ahead and click the like button because it really does help it reach more people, and I appreciate it. So if there's one thing that I got from, learning and reading so many books, it's that pretty much everyone who writes a self-help book believes they found that one thing that will solve everyone's problems. But it's complete garbage. Over the past 100 years, there have been countless self-help gurus, financial experts, philosophers who've all spoken about formulas for achieving health, wealth, or wisdom. And yet, even today, nobody has agreed on one. So if there was a genuine proven formula, don't you think it would have been, widely accepted and implemented by now? The truth is, there is no recipe you can just plug and play on your path to a fit body, a jacked up bank account, or a calm mind. You can read all of the books in the world, and yet it's up to you to actually pick up the advice and then go out there and apply it and see if it works for you. Direct experience is absolutely the king in everything that you do in life. So this relates to a lesson I learned from Dr. Justin Mager, physician to Olympic athletes, health experts, and elite entrepreneurs. Justin says you have to figure out your own approach to health by running experiments. So you can read books, educate yourself, and try different diets, but at the end of the day, you still need to eat gluten to find out if you're gluten intolerant. So what works for 9-to-5 champions might not work for the professional sprinter or the stay-at-home mom. Learning is good, but only through applied learning can you translate those lessons into real results. So advice is overrated, which leads me to this next insight. Advice can be dangerous. The wrong advice can destroy you. There's no greater example I can think of than what happened to Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte when he took some really bad advice. In 1812, Napoleon decided to launch a military campaign known as the Russian campaign. So his foreign minister, Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, I probably butchered that, and some of his military commanders came up with a really great idea: invade Russia. They thought that it would be a quick piece of cake, quick invasion, back before Christmas. They had no idea what was going to happen when they got there, because Napoleon's closest people also told him that their allies would come to Russia with them. Napoleon's decision to listen to this advice was a complete disaster. His army was the largest force anyone had ever gathered up in history to that point, but it didn't help them. The Russian army went full scorched earth, burning villages and crops as they retreated, and this made it almost impossible for the French to feed themselves. Many died due to starvation and exhaustion, and it was only going to get worse. Winter arrived, and soon the French army was dropping like flies from hunger, disease, and the brutal Russian temperatures in winter. When they finally reached Moscow, the city was abandoned and in flames with no supplies. Napoleon was forced to get the hell out of there and go home. His army of over 600,000 was reduced to under 200,000. Trying to invade Russia, 400,000 men died there. And Napoleon's reputation as an invincible commander was shattered, all because he decided to listen to terrible advice. What Napoleon should have known also applies to you. Choose your advice carefully. Advice is absolutely everywhere, especially these days with social media, and most of it isn't for you or even correct. Only a very small amount of tips will have the power to actually improve or change your life. Some might be helpful, most don't apply. Some have the power to bring you down even. So the key is to learn the difference. Now, here's something only successful people will really know. As you dive deeper into your field and start to establish yourself as an expert, people will seek your attention a lot. It's like a law of physics that just when a big success is on the horizon and deep thinking is the most important, the world will throw distractions your way. The solution is to say no to pretty much everything, but that's easier said than done. Luckily, there's more than one way to say no to stuff. To consistently manage your commitments, you can explore new ways to say no. So here are some suggestions I got from author and entrepreneur Tim Ferriss, who's always practical and pretty helpful. I recommend checking out some of his books as well. I've read almost all of them. Consider hiring someone to handle your emails and appointments and instruct them to decline 99% of incoming requests. If hiring isn't an option, act as your own gatekeeper and treat your emails as if you needed to protect your time. Consider whether you're only saying yes out of guilt or fear, not for valid reasons that actually help you. Picture the event happening early the next morning when you'd be in a rush. Would you still want to say yes? While no is an important word, here's another perspective, okay? Gary Vaynerchuk, a digital marketing expert, you've probably heard of him, allocates 20% of his time to saying yes to opportunities that are a little bit out there or unconventional, and this allows him to keep an open mind to things. And no really is the most important word in the dictionary. Learn to say it in different ways, but keep that 20% in mind as well, because you never know when new opportunities are going to arise and you need to take them. So you might think I'm a bit of a weirdo for saying this, but I do think magic exists. And no, not in the whole Expelliarmus, wand-waving, Harry Potter kind of way, although maybe it does, I don't know. But if magic is the ability to shape your reality and change things in ways that can't be easily explained, then this kind of thing is happening all the time. Through the power of your mind, you can completely change your reality. A great example of this was when Conor McGregor fought for the UFC featherweight title in 2015. He was up against an absolute monster, Brazilian featherweight champion Jose Aldo, a guy who hadn't lost in over 8 years and never by knockout. But when Conor walked out there and KO'd the man in 13 seconds to capture the title, everyone was asking the same question. How the hell did he do that? And the response from Conor's team created way more questions than answers. They said that they saw it happen before it happened. Most people call BS on that explanation, thinking it was just some fluff for the cameras. That was until they released the footage of Conor's team in the locker room an hour before the fight. The footage shows Conor practicing the exact sequence, slipping Aldo's right hand punch and countering with a left that ultimately led to that 13-second knockout. Nobody could believe it. Conor and his team used visualization and the power of the mind to bend reality to their will. And since that day, Conor earned the nickname Mystic Mac for being able to predict outcomes of fights before they ever happened. Now, it's pretty crazy, right? But of course, visualization is great, but at the end of the day, to get results, you do need to take action with that visualization, but you'll be surprised how powerful it can be. There are ways we can harness the power of the mind through self-awareness, reflection, and visualization to get the outcomes that we want. So let's say you've got a YouTube addiction. Now, you might be struggling like a madman trying to get yourself to stop, but one day you decide to journal about your addiction for a while until you discover that it's just a childhood coping mechanism. You recognize it straight away, which makes it easier to spot when it happens. Then you might write a little bit about other things you could be doing instead and visualize a life where you don't watch YouTube all the time. You might even create a vision board of images that represent your ideal life. And by doing this stuff, you're using the power of awareness, reflection, and visualization, and soon you might start to notice yourself watching YouTube less and naturally feeling the desire to work on your side hustle more without really trying. Fast forward a year and your life looks completely different. You've successfully used magic to transform your life. And what about the emotions that hold you back, like anxiety or boredom? Well, just like Jesus apparently turned water into wine, people with a ton of self-awareness can turn negative emotions into positive ones. They call this emotional alchemy. Awareness and the power of the mind can also give you something that I know so many of you are struggling with, a sense of purpose. When you understand your passions, fears, strengths, and weaknesses, you can make choices that are more in alignment with who you really are or who you want to be. And this alignment can feel fulfilling to you in a way that does feel like magic. So of all the books that I've read, one book in particular stands out to me when things get really tough. It's probably one of the most important books you'll ever read, and that book is called Man's Search for Meaning, and it's written by a pretty badass guy called Viktor Frankl. David Goggins is a tough guy, but but if both of them were put in a concentration camp, my money would be on Frankl to come through the other side. Why? Because that's actually what Frankl did. In 1942, Frankl and his family were deported to the Auschwitz concentration camp. It was there that they went through pretty much the worst stuff that you can possibly imagine as a human being. You know, forced labor, torture, creepy experiments, mass executions, disease. I won't go on, but you get the point, right? Now, what's really cool about old Victor is that he figured out something super important while he was there. He realized that the people who had a sense of purpose or, meaning in their lives were more likely to survive. For example, some people found meaning in the desire to see their loved ones again, or to just, protect and support each other. Some turned the suffering into something creative like music or art, and some even found meaning in making the decision to suffer in a noble way. So even in the worst possible situation, he chose to keep a positive mindset. He thought there had to be some reason behind all of the suffering, and he wanted to find it. So Victor chose to help and comfort other inmates even when he was struggling to survive himself. And get this, while he was in the camp, he mentally planned out future lectures and books that he was going to write. He used his imagination to escape from the reality of the concentration camp and go into his future reality. He even wrote his insights and ideas down on scraps of paper that he would find strewn around the place. And it's pretty sad, but Victor's family didn't make it through. When he got out in 1945, he turned his experiences into a therapy called logotherapy, which is all about finding meaning in life. And the basic idea is that no matter what you're going through, you can always choose how to respond. The things that happen in your life can never stop you from choosing a positive mindset. And honestly, I can't think of a more profound life lesson than that. And if you fully embrace that, you can achieve anything that you set your mind to. Nothing can stop you. Now, on this channel, I talk all about things related to self-development, but my bread and butter is drop servicing. It's a business model I use to make money online, live a life of freedom, do cool stuff, and I've put together a free training that covers everything that you need to know in order to make your first $10,000 of drop servicing, even if you're a complete beginner, and we've got you covered. So if you want to learn more about that, you can check out the link in the description below this video. Otherwise, leave a comment if you have any questions for me, like this video, subscribe to this channel if you want to see more content like this, and otherwise, check out the 2 videos you see here, and I'll see you over in the next video.